If you aren't doing this with your money, inflation is causing you to become poorer and poorer every single day. Hello and welcome to Practical Personal Finance. My name is Andrew Scheer, and this is where I give you the information you need to understand and succeed with money. Today I'm going to be talking about inflation. I'll help you understand the concept, give you some examples, and tell you about the pros and cons. Make sure you stick around until the end when I'll be discussing the effects of stimulus checks that Americans received earlier this year. Before I get started, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. You never know, you might learn something new about money. Alright, first let's talk about what inflation is. Inflation is when the prices for goods and services go up over time, even though those goods or services remain the same. One of the most iconic examples of inflation, at least in my mind, is the McDonald's cheeseburger. In 1955, you could grab one for just 19 cents. Now, in 2020, the same cheeseburger will cost you $1, more than 5 times what it used to. If you order a cheeseburger at Mickey D's now, are you getting 5 times as much food as you would back in the 50s? Of course not. The only thing that's really changed is the price. Inflation happens when a government or central bank creates and distributes new money. If you think like me, your mind immediately becomes filled with giant printing press machines that are turning huge rolls of paper into fresh, crisp dollar bills. But most money in 2020 doesn't exist in physical form. How then is it created and added to the system? To answer this question, I asked Sean Cover, host of the podcast Questioning Money.
The way money works today is that money is created by the Federal Reserve and through the banking system. Really, new money is specifically created through bank loans. When you go to a bank and you take out a loan for an investment or a house or whatever, that money is essentially being created out of nowhere. It doesn't exist, they're just creating that money out of nowhere, and that increases the money supply in the system.
When a bank issues a loan, they usually aren't physically handing you the money in cash. That's what Sean is talking about when he says that new money is created out of nowhere. There's no massive vault filled with cash or gold bars. In addition to banks issuing loans, this year we saw the US federal government issue stimulus checks to hundreds of millions of Americans.
Now in 2020, we have this stimulus where the Federal Reserve is actually creating new money themselves, not just through bank loans, and they're essentially flooding the economy with this new money that they're creating themselves.
When all this new money is added to our economy, all of the other money that's already in the economy becomes worth just a little bit less. And since the amount of goods and services out there doesn't increase just because the money supply did, things like cars, houses, and even pizzas start to cost just a little bit more.
Every new dollar that is printed reduces the value of every dollar already in existence. If you imagine that the economy is a pizza pie, right? Divided into 8 slices of pizza. When you print new money, you're not making the pizza any bigger. The pizza stays the same size. What you're doing now is that you are cutting the pizza into 9 slices instead of 8. And that 9th slice is whatever the government or the Federal Reserve is printing the money for.
The mechanism by which the Federal Reserve controls inflation is through setting interest rates on loans. If interest rates are low, people will take on more debt, boosting economic output and also leading to more inflation. If interest rates are high, people won't take out as many loans, slowing both inflation and economic growth. So is inflation good or bad? The answer to that question is not so straightforward. Considering that people taking out loans from banks causes new money to enter the system, subsequently causing inflation, it almost seems like inflation is inevitable. If there were no loans, sure, there would be little or no inflation, but people wouldn't be able to buy homes or start new businesses. The economy would stagnate and we wouldn't make much progress as a society. For that reason, some people see inflation as a natural consequence of progress, and in general, a positive thing.
The way our system works is that the Federal Reserve and the government actually kind of want prices of things to go up over time. You know, this sort of inflationary monetary system is by design. And the reason that governments and Federal Reserve like this is because it makes the value of your debt worth less over time. So if you buy a house for $100,000 in 1970, you can sell that house for $600,000 in 2020. It encourages you to take out debt primarily to do investing. It wants you to invest in things like new businesses, technological growth.
But what about working class Americans? These are the people who aren't necessarily taking out loans to start businesses or purchase homes. I asked Sean what effect inflation has on people like this.
Because printing new money doesn't actually buy more stuff for the economy, it really dilutes the value of the dollar, and this really penalizes people who are just saving their money in the bank and not investing their money so it grows. The problem with this is that this really hurts low-income Americans the most, because low-income Americans can't really afford to invest their money in things like the stock market. They need to spend most of their money on necessities like food and housing, and whatever money they are able to save, they can't really invest. They keep it in the bank to use for emergencies or whatever, to build up a small savings fund.
For working class Americans who found themselves unemployed earlier this year, the stimulus checks and additional unemployment benefits issued by the federal government were like a life preserver to someone who had fallen overboard on a ship. But because of inflation, these benefits were also like a double-edged sword. While they certainly helped people make it through a few months, they did so at the expense of years' worth of wealth inequality down the road. I want to say thanks to Sean for taking the time to answer my questions about inflation and the history of money. If you'd like to hear our entire conversation, then check out the Practical Personal Finance podcast and look for episode number 3. It's available right now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'll also leave a link to Sean's podcast, Questioning Money, in the description of this video. What do you think about inflation? Is it good or bad for society? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then you'll love this other one I made recently in which I discussed the concept of opportunity cost with author Jesse Rancourt. Click the link right there to check it out. I'll be back next week with a discussion on how to find and select a financial advisor. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Scheer, and I'll see you next time.